Hello, everybody. Thank you for taking the time to join today's webinar. In today's session, we're going to be talking about 5 days to start measuring OEE and how to get started. So my name's Sam. I'm one of the senior account executives here at Evocon. And my role at Evocon is supporting new clients in adopting our system, so particularly helping them get started with the trial and getting them up and running with the first few phases of a rollout. What we're going to be covering in today's session, so I'm going to kick things off with just a little bit of an introduction to who we are at Evocon. We'll talk a little bit about what's holding manufacturers back from adopting systems like ours. Then I'm going to run through what the 5 first days of the trial would look like, how to prepare for that. Then I'm going to jump into a system demonstration. So I'll show you what the system looks like and the features that we have. And then hopefully we'll have some time at the end to do a little bit of a Q&A. So in regards to the Q&A, in the system here, there is a chat feature. So you should see that on the right-hand side of your window. It'd be really great if you could open the chat now just to have a little practice and maybe just drop in a comment about where you're joining us from. But as I go through the session, if you do have any questions, put them in the chat. My colleague here will highlight them, and at the end, I'll try and answer your questions when we come to the end. So hopefully I'll see a couple of countries drop into there to let us know where you're joining us from. So a little bit about Evocon first. So what we do at Evocon, we're a real-time production monitoring system that helps you identify challenges to know how you can improve production efficiency on the shop floor. How it works is we help by giving you real-time visibility into your production. We help reduce the manual work that's required compared to manual data collection processes if you're using pen and paper and spreadsheets, so reducing that burden on the operators. All in all, that helps you reduce the amount of time that you might be spending reporting, all that number crunching that you might be doing in Excel at the moment, and help you identify what the downtime reasons are on your machines so you can help identify that and improve your overall efficiency. And all of this is done through a system that's very quick to set up, easy to install and configure. Evocon, so we're based in Europe, but we actually have a global presence. We're working across 65 different countries at the moment. Our system's available in multiple languages, so depending on where you are, we probably have your language in the system. We're a relatively small team at the moment, just over 45 team members, and we're industry agnostic. So we work across 16 different manufacturing industries, very big in food and beverage, but also with pharmaceuticals, consumer goods, and also construction materials. So let's talk a little bit about what's holding manufacturers back into adopting systems like Evocon. Research has recently shown that about 70% of manufacturers are still reliant on pen and paper processes and spreadsheets. So when we're meeting with new customers, we like to ask, what's prompted this decision and why have you come to us now? We often hear some of these recurring concerns that I've got on the screen here. So when we talk about long implementation times, Evocon is a production monitoring system, but we're very similar to a MES, a manufacturing execution system. A typical MES system can take anywhere between 6 to 18 months to implement. So that can be a concern about the amount of time it might actually take for you to get production data from the shop floor. With that in mind, there's concern about if it's going to be complex to get the system configured, and also managing the upkeep. Who is going to be the main person responsible for ensuring that the data is correct and working as it should be? There's also the concern about high upfront costs. Times are very difficult in the manufacturing industry, rising commodity prices, budgets are tight. Does your company have the budget to invest in a system for production monitoring? And then there's a fear of disruption in the production itself. Everybody is busy. We all have a lot of day-to-day tasks to maintain. And there's a concern about if you're going to implement a new system like this, is it actually going to take the attention or take resources away from actually keeping the production running as it is today? Another important point there is the resistance from operators. This we hear quite often from new clients when they come to us, that there's a concern that a production monitoring system might be perceived as a big brother system that is going to highlight potential issues with certain individuals on the shop floor. And then there's a concern about the adoption. At the end of the day, tools like Evocon, we are just a tool. If it's not adopted by the team, there's a chance that this might fail. But all of these concerns can be mitigated with a well thought out plan for a trial and doing a phased rollout to not take on too big a project from the start. And the idea of today's session is I'm going to run you through how we work at Evocon, how we get a trial up and running, and what our suggestions are to get started with a production monitoring system. So first things first, it's about preparing properly for the trial or the proof of concept. We really recommend that you assign an internal team and get other stakeholders involved. If I was in your shoes, if I was a production manager in a factory today, I wouldn't really like to have the decision of moving forward with a production tool like Evocon just to be solely on my shoulders. So it makes sense to involve other stakeholders, in this process. Those stakeholders should include some operators, some team from the shop floor. It's important to get their feedback. They're the ones who are going to be using the system as their day-to-day work, so it's important to understand how they feel the system works as part of their daily task. You want to involve some supervisors and production managers. They're the ones who are going to be making the most use of the data. They're going to be the team who are going to be identifying the challenges and coming up with the improvement projects. If you involve like a limited team like this in this trial process, then that means you get to make a decision collaboratively, and it's not just a sole person deciding to go forward with a solution like ours. Next, it's important to clarify what your goal is. Going into the trial, you should set out what you aim to achieve. Some examples of what a goal might be to eliminate paper from the shop floor. It could be reducing the amount of time required for data processing, getting all downtime accounted for during the trial period. All of those are very good examples. There's not a specific one that should be applied to all cases, but it's important to think about what you want your end objective to be. The importance of that is if that objective has been met, then you know that the project has been a success and you can move forward with confidence. The third part there is about completing the pre-trial checklist. So this is actually more on our team side. We would be supporting you through this process. So what that means is we would help you identify the sensors and network requirements to get Evocon up and running in your production environment. But on that part, it's something that we would be supporting you through that process. So what does the trial period look like? From the start, when you decide to move forward with a trial or a proof of concept with us, next step is to complete that checklist and get the hardware sent out to you. Depending on where you are in the world, you could receive the hardware in a matter of days, but normally it takes no longer than a week for the hardware to arrive with you. And then we move on to the first 5 days of the trial. And that's what I'm going to be covering in the next few slides as I go through this session. After the first 5 days, you go over to the long term of the trial, which is the next 25 days, which is all about analyzing and making use of the data that we're collecting. So let's talk about the first 5 days. So after receiving your hardware, on day one, the plan is to actually install the hardware on the line. So installing the hardware, as I said, we would be working with you to diagnose and specify what hardware is going to make most sense for your production environment. Often the installation can take anywhere between 15 to 60 minutes, so it's quite quick. Normally we're retrofitting new sensors to the production assets, so very quick and easy to install. Our system is plug and play, so it can be set up pretty fast. Then it's about setting up your account, so adding users and starting to configure some of the settings in Evocon. The system out of the box does come with some standard configuration, but it's important to configure that to your own production environment. So one of the main things we want to focus on first is adding your known downtime reasons for the production asset that we're going to be monitoring. Just a little bit more on the sensors. So as I mentioned, we're normally retrofitting, so adding new sensors to the production assets. The type of sensors really do depend on the process. So we use a lot of optical sensors, but we might be using encoder wheels, relay kits into PLCs. But as I mentioned, before we start the trial, we would work with you to specify what hardware is going to be required. So day two, as soon as possible, we want to start training your team. So throughout the process to get to this point, we would probably already been working with yourself to introduce you to the system. But the next step is to explain some of the more of the features and settings to the administrators, so other people who are going to be helping manage the Evocon system. And then importantly, we want to run a session with your operators. So this is a very light training session to show them how they're going to be making use of Evocon as part of their daily work. The operator training session is around 20 minutes, and for the admin training, you're looking at 45 minutes to 1 hour. And really, we want to do that as soon as possible to make sure that your team can start engaging with the system and you can collect data as soon as possible. Day three, so at this point, we already have the sensors installed and the team are already trained, but day three is really about validating that the data we're receiving is correct. So we want to check that the amount of signals are coming in are accurate, that everything is configured and working properly, and that the stops are actually reflecting reality on the shop floor. So day three is around validation. If we need to make any more refinements, changes in the configuration, this is the time to do that before we move on to the long tail of the trial. Day 4, so at this point we should have everything configured and up and running properly. So this is the time to run a full shift in Evocon. At this point you want to have your operators engaging with Evocon, adding the downtime reasons, and we can already start to dig into and set up various dashboards and look at how the data is coming into the report. Again, on day 4, we're still doing a little bit of validation, so we might want to compare the results against your current production monitoring process, which might be pen and paper, just to make sure that everything is working as it should. Now, as we get to day 5, we should have had a completed shift. The system is completely validated. Operators are engaging with the system. So this is kind of our final step, just to make sure that everything is working as it should. And we can move forward into the following part of the trial with confidence that we can trust the data. Day 6 to 30, so this is, again, we have the system up and running, and what we're looking to achieve is, have a live system that's monitoring your lines, engaged operators, and have the data that you need to be able to implement effective improvement projects. So over this period, we would be meeting with you to make sure that we can understand and interpret the data in the right way. But the longer term, so day 6 to 30, is starting to make use of that data that we're collecting in Evocon. Good. So I'm now going to move over to the product demonstration. So I'm going to share my screen and we'll have a run through of how Evocon works. So Evocon is a cloud application, which means that you access it through your web browser. We just have a web interface. So here I'm at the login screen. So I'm going to enter my user credentials now, and let's log in to take a look at Evocon. So here we have Evocon. In Evocon, we have 4 primary views that I'm going to run you through today. There's shift view, factory overview, dashboard, and reports. We're going to kick things off with having a look at shift view. So in shift view, we're looking at the current ongoing shift on one of our production assets, which in this case is Bosch machine 1. If I wanted to jump to another production asset, I just click on the station at the top here, and I can pick from the list of the other machines that I'm monitoring in this factory. But for now, we're just going to stay with Bosch machine 1. In the top left-hand corner, we have a little bit of information about how the shift has been going so far. So we can see the amount of units that have been produced, what product we're working on, and what products were worked on in previous shifts. We also have our OEE score up at the top here, so 76% at the moment, which is very good. And we have a couple of widgets. So this first widget is showing the speed of the line. Here, if I move my cursor over this widget, you can see that it highlights in the timeline view what period of time I'm looking at. And this is indicating how fast the products are moving down the line. The other widget that we have is OEE, and here we can look at the OEE broken down hour by hour, where we're looking at the availability by the performance and quality. Next over, we have Mr. Evocon. So Mr. Evocon is the human representation about this shift performance. He actually changes his emotion depending on the OEE score on the line, but it's a universal thing that everyone can recognize a person's emotion. So if he's happy, things are good. He can be neutral, so maybe there's room for improvement, and he can also be sad. We get a lot of very positive feedback from our customers that they always want to finish the shift with Mr. Evocon in a happy state. Now, as I mentioned, we're currently looking at the ongoing shift. If I wanted to jump back to a previous shift in time, I can do that by going up to the middle of the screen here, clicking on the date, and I can jump back to any previous shift since I've been recording with Evocon. But as we've got a nearly complete shift worth of data, let's stay on the morning shift here. So in the main view, we have the timeline for the shift. Now, we use a traffic light system to indicate how the production is going. So if you see green, that means the products are being made at their ideal cycle time. Anytime there's yellow, that means there's been a performance loss, so the target wasn't met. And anytime there's red, there's been a period of downtime. So as you can see, this shift started at 6 o'clock and it finishes at 2. So if you haven't guessed, each of these bars represents 1 hour in time. And as I mentioned previously, Evocon is a real-time production monitoring system. So if you keep your eye on this bar down here, it will slowly move across as I'm talking. Now, when it comes to how an operator engages with Evocon, at the beginning of their shift, one of the first things they were going to want to do is tell Evocon that they're looking after this station, this machine. So they do that by going down to the operators button down here, pressing operators, and picking themselves from the list. So I'm going to say that I'm looking after Bosch machine 1 from 6 until 2, and I'll press save. Now, as an operator, one of the main things that I'm expected to do with Evocon is explain or add reasons to the downtime. So whenever the machine isn't running, we want to understand the reason why. And if you look at the screen here, some of the downtime is a darker shade of red, which means a reason has already been associated. But there's these two blocks here that are lighter red with a question mark, which means at the moment, Evocon doesn't know why the line wasn't running at that time. So as I mentioned, as an operator, what I'm expected to do here is click on the period of downtime, add a reason. The stop groups and stop reasons are configured by you to be appropriate to the asset that we're monitoring in your factory. But I'm going to say, for example, here I had to do a machine reset, and I'll press save. And now you can see this period of downtime, which was for 7 minutes, has now gone from a lighter shade of red to a dark shade of red. So we know the reason why the machine wasn't running at that time. In addition to adding downtime reasons, we also want the operators to tell us what product they're working on. Different products might run through the machine at different speeds, so they need to tell us what's being produced. To add a changeover, to do that, the operator goes down to the period of time where the changeover happened. So we'll say, actually here, we did a changeover, and then I pick the product that we started working on. So let's say we started working on the tar2 product, and I can press save. If I know what the target quantity is, I can add that there, and I can also add a lot and batch number to help with tracking further down the line, but I'll press save. So as an operator, adding the downtime reasons, adding product changeovers, and ideally we also want to add reasons to these periods of yellow. So this is performance loss. These could be small stops or slow running of the line. To add a reason to the speed loss reasons, then to do that, I just click on the period. I can drag my bar to say what period was affected by said reason, add a reason, and we'll say that there was slow production, and press save. Now, before I move on from shift view, just to cover one other aspect here, in Evocon, we have an optional feature called checklists. So in the timeline view here, if you can see a few of these pop-ups, here's an example, and here, and here. This is the feature that we call checklists. Checklist is used for any other tasks that the operators need to do on their production asset during working shift. So it's typically used for quality inspections, machine inspections, but actually can be used for various other tasks that the team might need to be doing. These are configured by you, and I'll just open an example here. So this checklist was prompted after we did a change over here. So after a certain amount of units were produced, this quality inspection appeared, and I have the instructions about what I would need to do as an operator. So remove the sample, does the label pass, material, is the product free from defects? Yes, 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 and it's done. So in this example, you can see this checklist has now gone green, so it's been successful. But if one of these was out of tolerance, or if the label didn't pass the inspection criteria, I press no, and you can see this is turned to orange to say that it was unsuccessful. Now, the beauty here is that the checklists are triggered by real events that are happening on the line. They're collected digitally, but also importantly, you can have real-time alerts that are tied to these checklists. So for example, on this quality inspection, now it's failed, I have the option to have an alert that might go to my quality team to tell them that batch number 123 on Bosch machine 1 has failed a quality inspection, you need to go down there and take action. But as I mentioned, these can be configured by you to digitally collect the tasks that need to be completed by operators through their working shift. Okay, running a little bit tight on time, so I'm going to move on a little bit quicker. So that's shift view. I'm going to explain some of the other views that we have in Evocon now. Factory overview. So factory overview doesn't take too long to explain. Really, this is just that real-time snapshot of all of the production assets that you have in the factory. As you can see, we use that traffic light analogy again to show how those machines are working. Green, they're working at their target speed. Yellow, there's some slow production, and red means that stopped. At the moment in my factory, everything looks quite good, but generally this is just a display that would be up on a big screen in the factory so you can quickly look up and understand how things are going on the shop floor. The other variation of this live view is the timeline view. So in my demo tenant here, I actually have multiple factories, but you can see all of my production lines. And in essence, this is a compressed version of the shift view. But this is also a very nice view to have somewhere in the office or on the shop floor where you can quickly look at the screen, and due to the colors that we're using, very quick for the human eye to understand how the production is working on those production assets. Next, we have dashboards. So dashboards are a top-level look at the main KPIs that are important to you in your production environment. You can customize your dashboards depending on their use cases. I normally explain that you want to have a dashboard for all of the communication events that you're going to have in your working week. So for example, if you have a weekly stand-up or when you're doing your shift handover, or even a bi-weekly meeting that you're having with your maintenance manager, the idea here is you set up a custom dashboard to look at the main KPIs that are going to help you have a constructive conversation in that meeting, backed with the data. But really, it's a top-level look at some of that information. It's not as deep as we have in the reports. But I'll just explain what we're looking at the screen here. So this is my one dashboard where I'm looking at a 12-month overview of all of my factories. Each of these blocks is a widget, and you customize the blocks yourself or the widgets yourself just by adding a widget here, picking the most appropriate and applying the filters. So this is, as I said, the 12-month overview, but I have another one set up here from my maintenance review that I have with the maintenance team. And you can see I'm looking at a few different KPIs here, such as technical availability. And when it comes to downtime, I'm specifically looking at the technical downtime events and comparing how downtime has changed over different time periods. So we have the 30 days, 7 days, and yesterday. And the idea being there, when I'm in the meeting with my maintenance manager, we likely have some projects that we're working on to bring down, for example, machine reset. And I would expect that to be working its way down the order based on the project that we're working on together. So that's dashboards. As I said, easy to configure, really great tool to help with communication in the factory. When you have dashboards, you can share them between other users, but a really great visual aid to help you with those conversations that you're having daily. Next, we have reports. So in the Evocon reports here, we have 7 standard reports that you can interrogate in the system. There's downtime, speed loss, scrap, OEE, quantities, time usage, and checklists. Within each of these reports, there's actually a lot of different filters you can apply to get to the data that's valuable to you. Unfortunately, we don't have the time for me to show you too many examples, but I'll just give you a quick run through of how I can look into a bit more data on this downtime report. So let's start having a look at some different filters here. I want to look at the last 30 days. I want to dig in just to my one factory here, ABC Corp. I'm going to take out a couple of these stops. So I take out the uncommented and the organizational. And here we have it. I can already see what my main losses have been over the last 30 days at ABC. So maybe to be expected, one of the main losses is setup, product change over time. But maybe I want to dig in a little bit further to machine resets. Right now, we're looking at this month by month, but maybe if I change the x-axis to have a look at days, are different days different to others? Tuesday is a bit of an issue, so maybe I also want to dig in a little bit further and see if there's certain products that have an impact on this, or maybe even if different operators. Okay, so now we have an interesting picture. I can see that Todd is having a bit more challenge in regards to doing machine resets. So this is maybe highlighting to me that I might need to have a little bit of a meeting with Todd, or maybe offer him some additional training to see what's actually happening on the shop floor with him. So as I mentioned, I don't have the time to run you through all of the different reports, but hopefully just from this quick demonstration, you can see how easy and interactive they are to use. I've been playing around to get the visual as I like it here, but underneath you actually have the data that you can see here. If you wanted to, you can export it manually from Evocon, but also with Evocon, we have an API, which means you can easily extract the data to third-party systems like Power BI, so you can interrogate the data there as well. Okay, so that's my whistle-stop tour of Evocon. I'm going to jump out of this one now. Hopefully I do this right. Yes, good. So before I move on to the questions, I just wanted to show you this screen here. So this is what Evocon looks like when it's been set up in a factory. So we've got a couple of images there that's showing Evocon on a production line, and you can see the lady here is interacting with Evocon during her shift. So that's how an operator would normally engage with Evocon as they're working on the machine. Also there, we have another example of Evocon set up in the office with 5 different displays showing how the production assets are working. That's actually from one of our customers, Nova Packaging in Greece. And they shared with us that now they have the Evocon screen set up, they have the real window into their production. Even though they can see the production through the literal windows there, Evocon was able to give them the real picture to understand how their machines were working. And in the bottom right-hand corner, you can see a couple of dashboards. So this dashboard has been set up on the wall here, and I imagine this is used when there's a shift handover. People can gather around the screen and actually talk about how the previous shift has gone. Again, coming back to how I explained dashboards, really aid in that communication so you can have conversations backed up with data. Okay, so that's my introduction to Evocon, talking about the trial process and how you can get set up with our system very quickly. hopefully I've got a couple of questions that I can dig into now, so I'm going to open up the chat. But if you haven't added your question, please do so now. We've got 5 minutes, just right on time, so it'd be really good to see what other questions I can answer for you. Okay. So we've got one from Alexandra. I'm going to read this. I'll read it out as I'm reading through. So I also wonder how to have an overview of multiple factories and how to compare factory performance between factories. Alexandra, really good question. So we can support multi-factories in Evocon. I know that I did a very quick demonstration, but if you can recall when I was showing the factory overview and we had the timeline view, I had various different factories set up in there. So yes, regardless of the location, we can have the data coming into one Evocon tenant, as we call it. So it becomes very easy to benchmark and compare different factories against each other. Often when I'm working with new clients with Evocon, I know this is a recurring problem where you have a site in the UK, for example, another site in Spain. Currently, if you're measuring OEE, it's very hard to ensure that you're comparing apples with apples. And that's one of the beauty of having everyone on the same system, because it should be more consistent. So when you're reviewing the OEE for the UK site to Spain, if you're both using Evocon, you know that you're at the same place. But yes, to answer your question, multi-factory management is very common for us, and we can support that. And real is Andre, is quality implemented in OEE tracking and calculation? Yes, Andre, I didn't get a chance because, again, the speed I had to go through the demonstration today, I didn't get to explain how we monitor quality. You're dead right. It's a very important part of OEE. So the rule of thumb that we have it with Evocon, if you are automatically tracking quality on the line, we want to automatically track that in our system. So what I mean by automatically, if rejects are automatically being taken off the line, we ideally want to have additional sensors to pick up that quality automatically. So first thing, automatic scrap monitoring or quality monitoring is what we prefer, but there is the option in the system there if rejects or scrap or quality is taken off the line manually and there's not an option to have sensors, the operators can also add it in the shift view. That's the first view I was showing you in the demonstration. And there's a few different ways that they can do that. But yes, quality, very important part. Didn't get a chance to demonstrate it to you today, but there's a nice QR code on the screen there. So if you wanted me to explain that in a little bit more detail, just scan that QR code, book a meeting, and I'll explain in more in depth about how we monitor quality with Evocon. Alexandra, I'm impressed with the trials timeline. What if we needed more days to make a decision? Alexandra, I'm trying to think what you mean. Is it if it's making a decision before moving forward with the trial or after the trial? How to interpret that one? Let's say, so if it's about making a decision at the end of the trial, throughout that 30-day period where we're going to be working with you, our team is going to be working very closely with you. So we're going to have support you through the initial setup, and we'll be having at least short sync ups every week through that trial period. So a quick 30-minute meeting to see how things are going. So I would hope that as we get into the second half of the trial period, we'll already be having those discussions about what the impression is of Evocon. But at the end of the day, if you do need a little bit more time to make a decision, that's fine, and we understand that, and we will work with you. So depends on the situation, but we will work with you, and it's not a hard line. You don't have to make a decision dead on the 30 days. We can be a bit flexible. Okay, so we've got 2 minutes to spare. If anyone has any last questions that they want to drop in, now's your chance. I'll wait another 10 seconds and see if any other questions come in. While I'm doing that, I'm going to have a look through the rest of the comments that came in. Quite a bunch today. Okay, well, let's wrap things up. As you can see on the screen, there's a QR code. I appreciate this was a very quick run through today. Hopefully you did find it valuable. But as a next step, we'd love to have a conversation with you to talk about your production environment and how Evocon might be able to help you. So do scan that QR code. Please get in touch. We'd love to arrange a session. And thank you very much for joining today. Really appreciate it. Thanks. Bye-bye.